The rain beat against the windows of Magnolia Diner like tiny drums on that Tuesday morning. The smell of fresh coffee and bacon filled the air as Shayla wiped down the counters, getting ready for the morning rush. At 32, she'd been working at this diner for nearly 8 years, and she knew every regular customer by name. The bell above the door jingled, and Shayla looked up to see an elderly white woman she'd never seen before struggling through the entrance. The woman's hands gripped a worn walker tightly, her knuckles almost white from the effort. Her gray hair was neatly pinned back, but her face showed the strain of each step she took. "Hold on there," Shayla called out, quickly putting down her cloth and hurrying to the door. "Let me help you with that." The old woman looked up, surprised. Her pale blue eyes had that look Shayla recognized, the look of someone used to battling daily tasks alone. "Thank you, dear," the woman said, her voice soft but clear. "These old bones don't move like they used to." Shayla held the door open wider and guided the woman inside. "Raining something fierce today. How about we get you by the window? The light's nice there, and you can watch the world go by." The woman nodded, and Shayla walked slowly beside her, matching her pace without making it obvious. Shayla had learned this gentle art from caring for her own grandmother years ago, helping without hovering, supporting without smothering. "I'm Martha," the woman offered as Shayla helped her settle into the booth. "Martha Wilson, just moved to town last month." "Welcome to our little corner of the world, Miss Martha. I'm Shayla. This is my section of the diner, so you got lucky today," she winked, pulling out the laminated menu from behind the napkin holder. "Can I start you with some coffee?" Martha nodded, her hands trembling slightly as she reached for her purse. "Black, please. And maybe some scrambled eggs, if they're not too much trouble." "No trouble at all. That's what we're here for." Shayla headed to the kitchen, calling in the order to Hank, the morning cook. When she returned with the coffee, she noticed Martha's hands shaking more as she tried to lift the mug. Without drawing attention to it, Shayla turned back to the counter and poured the same coffee into a to-go cup with a secure lid. "Here you go," she said, swapping out the drinks. "These are easier to handle, and they keep it hot longer too." Something in Martha's eyes changed, a flash of recognition, of being truly seen. "That's very thoughtful of you. My grandma had arthritis, something terrible. I remember how she struggled with regular cups." Martha took a careful sip through the lid. "Rheumatoid arthritis. Had it for 20 years now. Gets worse every winter." "That's tough. You're here all alone, Miss Martha." A shadow crossed the older woman's face. "My husband passed 6 months ago. 52 years together, and suddenly I'm starting over at 78. She gave a small laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "Thought a new town might help. New beginnings and all that." Shayla squeezed Martha's shoulder gently. "Fresh starts take courage. Good for you." When the eggs arrived, Shayla noticed Martha struggling with the fork. Without making a fuss, she brought a set of the thicker-handled silverware they kept for children. "Try these instead," she said casually, less slippery. Martha looked at the utensils, then up at Shayla with a gaze that held decades of wisdom. "You notice things others don't you?" Shayla shrugged. "Just trying to make your breakfast nice, that's all." As the morning rush picked up, Shayla kept an eye on Martha's booth while serving her other tables. Unlike some customers who demanded attention constantly, Martha sat quietly, watching the rain and occasionally making notes in a small book she pulled from her purse. When it came time for Martha to leave, Shayla helped her back to the door. The rain had stopped, leaving puddles that reflected the cloudy sky. "Will we see you again, Miss Martha?" Shayla asked. Martha nodded, her grip firm on her walker. "I think Tuesday mornings might become my little tradition. It's nice to find a place where you're not just another old lady in the way." Shayla smiled. "You're never in the way here. See you next Tuesday." Neither woman knew then that this simple exchange was just the beginning of something that would change both their lives forever. True to her word, Martha showed up at Magnolia Diner the next Tuesday at 9:30 sharp. Shayla spotted her through the window, making her way slowly with her walker. This time, Shayla had already set aside the corner booth, the one with extra space to park the walker and a good view of the maple trees outside. "Good morning, Miss Martha," Shayla called out, already pouring black coffee into a to-go cup. "Your spot's waiting for you." A hint of surprise crossed Martha's face. "You remembered." "Course I did," Shayla replied, helping Martha settle in. Not every day we get a new regular. Over the next few weeks, Martha's visits became as predictable as the sunrise. Every Tuesday and Friday morning, 9:30 on the dot, she'd make her way to what everyone at the diner now called Martha's booth. If someone else happened to be sitting there, they'd quickly be offered a free piece of pie to move elsewhere. "You don't have to chase people away from me," Martha protested one day, watching a young couple relocate to the counter. Shayla waved off her concern. "They're just passing through. Your family now." By the third month, Shayla had learned to read Martha's good days from her bad ones. On good days, Martha wore a touch of pink lipstick and carried a book with her. On bad days, when the arthritis flared up, her hands would be red and swollen, and she'd order toast instead of eggs because it was easier to manage. "My daughter called last night," Martha shared one Friday morning as Shayla refreshed her coffee. "She lives in Arizona. Wants me to move there, says the dry heat would be good for my joints." "And what did you tell her?" Shayla asked, pausing in her work. "That I've moved enough for one lifetime." Martha smiled slightly. "Besides, who would look after my window booth if I left?" Little by little, their conversation stretched beyond the usual waitress small talk. Shayla learned that Martha had been a high school English teacher for 43 years. Martha discovered that Shayla was raising two kids, Dian, age 10, and Kira, age 7, while taking online classes when she could afford them. "Business administration," Shayla explained, showing Martha her textbook during a slow period. "One day I want to open my own place. Nothing fancy, just good food made with love." "You'll do it," Martha said with such certainty that Shayla almost believed it herself. The other waitstaff noticed the special bond forming between them. Tanya, who worked the evening shift, teased Shayla about her adopted grandma. Louis, the busboy, started saving the newspaper crossword puzzle for Martha, knowing she enjoyed them. "She tips the same as everyone else," Shayla explained when her boss Tony raised an eyebrow at the special treatment. "She just needs a little extra time and care." Tony shrugged. "Never said a word against it. Good to see someone looking out for the old-timers." One Friday in her fourth month of visits, Martha didn't show up at her usual time. Shayla kept glancing at the door, her worry growing with each passing minute. By 10:15, she'd checked her watch a dozen times. "Maybe she's just running late," suggested Louis, noticing Shayla's concern. But Martha was never late. Her teacher's punctuality had stayed with her into retirement. During her break, Shayla called the only number she had for Martha, one she jotted down just in case weeks earlier. The phone rang 4 times before Martha answered, her voice weaker than usual. "I'm sorry I missed our breakfast," Martha said. "My hands aren't working right today. Couldn't even get dressed properly." Shayla gripped the phone tighter. "Do you need anything? Medicine? Groceries?" There was a pause on the line. "I wouldn't want to trouble you." "It's no trouble," Shayla said firmly. "That's what friends are for." And that was the moment their relationship truly stepped beyond the diner's walls, the moment when customer and waitress no longer defined them. Neither woman knew then just how much deeper their connection would grow, or how it would change both their lives in ways they couldn't imagine. After that phone call, Shayla couldn't stop thinking about Martha alone in her apartment. When her shift ended, she stopped by the grocery store and picked up some essentials: bread, soup, milk, tea bags, and a few easy-to-prepare meals. She also grabbed a bottle of arthritis cream she'd seen advertised on TV. The apartment complex where Martha lived was small but tidy, with flower boxes hanging from some of the windows. Apartment 203 had no flowers, just a simple welcome mat that looked brand new. Shayla knocked gently. "Miss Martha?" "It's Shayla from the diner." The door opened slowly to reveal Martha in a faded blue housecoat, her hair not quite as neat as usual. "You really didn't have to come," Martha said, but the relief in her eyes told a different story. "It's nothing," Shayla replied, lifting the grocery bags. "My kids are with their dad this weekend, so I've got plenty of free time." Martha's apartment was neat but sparse, few pictures on the walls, minimal furniture, like someone camping rather than living. A small table by the window held a collection of pill bottles arranged in a perfect line. "Let me put on some tea," Martha offered, moving slowly toward the kitchen. "You sit," Shayla insisted. "Just point me to the kettle, and I'll handle it." As the water heated, Shayla unpacked the groceries, noticing how empty the refrigerator was. Martha sat at the kitchen table, watching with a mixture of embarrassment and gratitude. The grocery delivery service charges $15 extra, Martha explained without being asked. Seems silly to pay that much just because these legs don't work like they used to. Shayla nodded, understanding immediately. On a fixed income, $15 made a difference. My grandmother always said asking for help was harder than giving birth, Shayla said, setting 2 mugs of tea on the table. Proud woman, just like you. Martha smiled at that. She sounds wise. She was. Raised me after my mum passed. Taught me everything important. Shayla hesitated, then added, I go to the store every Sunday after church anyway. It's no trouble to pick up a few things for you too. Martha started to protest, but Shayla cut her off gently. My grandmother would rise from her grave and snatch me bald if she knew I was charging an elder for helping out. That made Martha laugh, a real laugh that brightened her whole face. Well, when you put it that way, how can I refuse? And just like that, their Sunday routine began. Each week, Shayla would arrive with groceries and stay for a cup of tea. At first, their conversations were brief, both women still finding their way in this new friendship that crossed age, race, and circumstance. But by the third Sunday, something had shifted. Shayla noticed a box of old letters on Martha's bookshelf and asked about them. Thank you notes from my students, Martha explained, her eyes lighting up. 40 years of teaching, and these are my treasures. She pulled out a yellowed envelope. This one's from 1978, Bobby Thompson. He was failing English until I stayed after school with him for 3 months straight. Went on to become a journalist. Shayla sat transfixed as Martha shared story after story, each letter holding memories of lives she'd touched. Time slipped away as afternoon turned to evening, the tea grew cold, and still they talked. I should get going, Shayla said finally, noticing it was past 7. But I'd love to hear more next time. You really want to listen to an old woman's stories? Martha asked, genuine surprise in her voice. Those aren't just stories, Shayla replied, carefully placing the letters back in their box. That's your life's work. Of course I want to hear about it. As Shayla prepared to leave, Martha reached for her purse. Let me at least pay you for the groceries. Already taken care of, Shayla said firmly. But there is one thing you could do for me. What's that? Kira, my daughter, is struggling with reading. Her teacher says she's falling behind. I work so many hours, I don't always have time to help her practice. Understanding dawned in Martha's eyes. You want me to tutor her? Shayla nodded. Only if you're feeling up to it. Maybe she could come with me some Sunday. Martha's face transformed, the teacher in her awakening after years of retirement. I'd be honored. Truly honored. As Shayla drove home that evening, she realized something important had happened. What had started as simple kindness had become something more, a bridge between two lives that might never have connected if not for a rainy morning and a cup of coffee served with care. Winter came early that year, bringing bitter cold that seeped through old window frames and made joints ache. During one Sunday visit in late November, Shayla arrived to find Martha bundled in 3 blankets despite the mild weather outside. Heating's working fine, Martha insisted when Shayla asked, but her breath was visible in the apartment air. Just being thrifty. Electric bills go up this time of year. Shayla set down the groceries and checked the thermostat. It was set at 58 degrees, much too cold for an elderly person with arthritis. Miss Martha, you can't live like this. You'll get sick. Martha looked away, embarrassment coloring her cheeks. The bill last month was nearly $200. I just can't swing that and still afford my medicine. Shayla sat down across from Martha, noticing a stack of envelopes on the side table. Past due notices, their red lettering visible even from a distance. Without asking permission, she picked them up. These are from 3 months ago, Shayla said softly. Are you behind on other bills too? The silence that followed was answer enough. It's not as bad as it looks, Martha finally said, pulling the blankets tighter. Richard, my husband, he had good insurance, but there were still lots of out-of-pocket expenses during his last year. Cancer treatments aren't cheap, even with coverage. She gestured vaguely at the apartment. Sold our house to pay those bills. What was left plus my teacher's pension should have been enough, but inflation hits hard when you're on fixed income. Shayla felt her heart sink. She understood money troubles all too well. Let me turn up the heat, at least while I'm here, she offered, moving to the thermostat. We'll figure something out. That evening, after putting her kids to bed, Shayla pulled out her own stack of bills. Working double shifts at the diner barely covered her rent, childcare, and the night classes she was taking at the community college. Her dream of opening a small catering business seemed further away than ever. 2 nights later, Martha was helping Kira sound out words from a children's book when Shayla arrived late from her evening shift, looking exhausted. Long day. Martha asked after Kira had gone to play in the living room. Shayla nodded, sinking into a kitchen chair. Picked up an extra shift. One of the other waitresses called in sick. You're working too hard, Martha observed, pouring Shayla a cup of tea. What about your classes? Had to drop 2 of them, Shayla admitted. Couldn't afford this semester's full tuition. Martha's eyes reflected concern. But your business degree? We'll have to wait. Right now, keeping a roof over my kids' heads comes first. They sat in silence for a moment, 2 women from different generations and backgrounds, both struggling to stay afloat. My grandmother used to say, "The Lord sees all your hard work, even when nobody else does," Shayla said finally. I just have to believe better days are coming. Martha reached across the table to squeeze Shayla's hand. They will. You're too good a person for them not to. Over the next few weeks, Shayla noticed more troubling signs in Martha's apartment. The refrigerator was kept nearly empty to save electricity. Medicine bottles sometimes stayed at the same level between visits, suggesting Martha was stretching her prescriptions by skipping doses. One Sunday in January, Shayla arrived to find Martha struggling to organize a shoebox full of papers. Just trying to make sense of these property tax notices, Martha explained. They keep sending them, but I thought Richard sold all their properties before he passed. Shayla sat down beside her and helped sort through the jumble of official documents. Near the bottom of the box, she found a deed with Martha and Richard Wilson's names printed clearly at the top. Miss Martha, Shayla said slowly, according to this, you still own a house on Elmwood Drive. Martha adjusted her reading glasses and peered at the document. That can't be right. That was Richard's family home. We rented it out for years, but the last tenants were terrible, left it in awful shape. Richard told me he was selling it before he got too sick. Well, according to this paper, he never did, Shayla said, scanning the details. It says here you've owned it since 1982, and there's no record of sale. Martha sat back, visibly stunned. All this time, I've been pinching pennies, and there's a house just sitting there? Why wouldn't Richard tell me? Maybe he meant to, Shayla suggested gently. Maybe he just ran out of time. They looked at each other as the implications sank in. An unused house, past due property taxes, and 2 women desperately needing a break. The very next day, Shayla picked Martha up in her old Honda Civic, the back seat cleared of children's toys for once. They drove slowly through town until they reached Elmwood Drive, a quiet street lined with modest homes and mature oak trees. Number 47, Shayla said, checking the address on the deed. That should be it up ahead. They pulled up in front of a small blue house with peeling paint and overgrown bushes. The front porch sagged slightly, and several window shutters hung crooked. A no trespassing sign, faded from years in the sun, was still nailed to a tree in the yard. It looks worse than I remember, Martha whispered, staring through the car window. The last time I was here was for a tenant inspection, maybe 8 years ago. Shayla studied the property with a critical eye. Structure looks solid though. Roof doesn't seem to be sagging, and the foundation appears level. It's mainly cosmetic stuff from what I can see. Martha shook her head. I don't have the money to fix it up. And even if I did, I couldn't manage the work or find new tenants. Maybe I should just sell it as is and be done with it. Shayla sat quietly for a moment, an idea taking shape in her mind. Her apartment rent had gone up again last month, and the landlord had mentioned another increase coming in the summer. Meanwhile, she was helping Martha with groceries and occasionally slipping extra money into her purse when the older woman wasn't looking. What if, Shayla began, then paused, wondering if she was overstepping. What if I fixed it up? Martha turned to look at her. You. But when would you have the time? And the money for materials? My brother Pete works construction. He could help on weekends. And I've been saving a little for my business. Shayla tapped the steering wheel, thinking. It wouldn't be fast, but we could do it bit by bit. But why would you take that on? It's not your responsibility. Shayla took a deep breath. What if we made a deal? I fix up the house, and you let me and the kids live there for reduced rent. You'd have steady income from the property instead of it sitting empty and costing you tax money. I'd have a stable place for my family that won't keep raising the rent on us. Martha's expression changed as she considered the proposal. You'd do all that work? I would, Shayla said firmly. This could help both of us, Miss Martha. They sat in silence, looking at the neglected house that suddenly held possibility. We should at least look inside before deciding anything, Martha said finally. The interior of the house was dusty and showed signs of neglect, water stains on one ceiling, scuffed floors, a kitchen with outdated appliances. But as they walked through the rooms, Shayla could see beyond the current state to what could be. This could be Kira's room, she said, standing in a small bedroom with a window facing the backyard. And Dion would love having that big oak tree outside his window. Martha watched Shayla's excitement grow as they explored the house. You really think you can make this livable again? I know I can, Shayla replied, determination in her voice. It won't happen overnight, but I'm not afraid of hard work. Later that afternoon, they sat at Martha's kitchen table with a legal pad between them, sketching out the terms of their arrangement. Martha would provide the house and pay for major materials. Shayla would contribute labor, time, and her brother's expertise for the renovation. Once complete, Shayla would pay a rent amount well below market value, giving Martha reliable monthly income while saving Shayla from rising apartment costs. It feels strange, Martha admitted, pen hovering over their handwritten agreement. Making business arrangements with someone who's become. She trailed off, unsure how to define what they'd become to each other. Family, Shayla finished for her. That's what we are now, whether we planned it or not. Martha nodded, emotion welling in her eyes. Family it is, then. They signed the paper, both knowing that this moment marked a turning point in their lives. The house on Elmwood Drive represented more than just shelter or income. It was becoming a symbol of their unexpected connection, a physical manifestation of how two women from different worlds had found common ground. I should warn you, Martha said with a hint of mischief in her eyes, I may be old, but I know how to swing a paintbrush. Don't think I'll just sit back and watch you do all the work. Shayla laughed. I wouldn't dream of it, Miss Martha. This is our project now. Outside, the winter sun broke through the clouds, casting a warm glow through the window as they began planning their shared future, one repair at a time. Spring arrived, bringing longer days perfect for renovation work. The house on Elmwood Drive slowly transformed from an eyesore to a neighborhood bright spot. Every free moment Shayla had went into the project, evenings after her shifts, weekends, even early mornings before the kids woke up. Pete, true to his word, showed up every Saturday with his tools and occasional helpers from his construction crew. Consider it payback for all those lunches you packed me when I was broke, he told Shayla when she tried to offer him gas money. The kitchen came first, new countertops to replace the cracked laminate, cabinet doors rehung, and a deep cleaning that revealed the original charm of the 1960s tilework. No sense replacing what's still good, Martha observed, sitting in a folding chair and directing operations one afternoon. Despite Shayla's initial protests, Martha insisted on being present for major renovation days. These old eyes still know quality when they see it. Word about their project spread through the diner. Tony, Shayla's boss, started scheduling her shifts to accommodate renovation days. My wife says what you're doing is better than those TV shows, he explained, sliding an envelope with cash tips across the counter. The waitstaff wanted to chip in. Even Shayla's regular customers got involved. An electrician left a generous tip with a business card. Call me about those kitchen outlets. A retired carpenter brought his tools and spent a day rebuilding the sagging porch steps. A teacher from Martha's old school organized a painting party, bringing 6 other faculty members to tackle the exterior one sunny Saturday. I don't understand, Martha said, watching the volunteers work from her spot on the new porch swing. Why are all these people helping us? Shayla handed her a glass of lemonade. Because that's what community does. And you spent 40 years building this one, whether you realized it or not. The most touching contribution came from an unexpected source. One evening while Shayla was scrubbing bathroom tiles, a phone rang with an unfamiliar number. "Is this Shayla Johnson?" asked a deep voice. The waitress helping Martha Wilson with her house. The caller introduced himself as Michael, a former student from Martha's very first teaching job in 1973. "She wrote me a recommendation letter that got me into college. Changed my whole life trajectory. I'm a successful attorney now because she believed in me when nobody else did." Michael explained that a group of Martha's former students had organized online after hearing about her situation. "We've raised some money, nothing huge, but enough to help with the renovation. It's the least we can do for Miss Wilson." The next day, a check arrived for $4,300 with a card signed by dozens of her former students, many now grandparents themselves. Martha cried when Shayla showed it to her. "I never thought they remembered me," she whispered, tracing the signatures with trembling fingers. "Teachers don't always see their impact," Shayla said gently. "Doesn't mean it isn't there." The money went toward a new water heater and insulation, unglamorous necessities that would make the house comfortable year-round and keep utility bills manageable. Through spring and into summer, the renovation continued. Martha's health improved as she spent more time outdoors supervising the work, offering suggestions, and sometimes just enjoying the company. Her doctor remarked on her increased mobility and reduced pain levels at her checkup. "It's having purpose again," Martha explained to Shayla afterward. "Retirement is fine, but feeling needed, that's what keeps these old bones moving." Shayla understood. Between her diner shifts, parenting, and the renovation, she was exhausted but fulfilled. Her children thrived with the project too. Dean learned basic carpentry from Pete, while Kira's reading improved dramatically under Martha's continued tutoring. By late August, the major work was complete. Fresh paint brightened every room, new fixtures gleamed in the bathroom, and the backyard had been cleared of years of overgrowth to reveal a small patio perfect for summer dinners. 1 month more, Shayla told her children as they toured the nearly finished house. "Then we can move in." On their Tuesday morning at the diner, a tradition they'd maintained throughout the renovation, Martha watched Shayla serve other customers with her usual care and attention. "You know what I've been thinking," Martha said when Shayla refilled her coffee. "That house is too big for just you and the kids." Shayla paused, coffee pot in midair. "What do you mean?" "That back bedroom with its own bathroom. It's perfect for someone who might need easy access. Someone who doesn't do stairs well anymore." Shayla's eyes widened as she understood. "Miss Martha, are you saying what I think you're saying?" Martha straightened her shoulders with newfound confidence. "No sense in both of us paying separate utilities. Besides, Kira still needs help with her reading, and DM could use someone to make sure he actually does his homework." Their eyes met in perfect understanding. What had started as a business arrangement had evolved into something neither woman had expected, a chance to create something neither had fully experienced before, a home built on chosen family. September brought cooler weather and the final touches to the house on Elmwood Drive. The last of the furniture had been moved in, some pieces from Martha's apartment, others donated by friends or purchased second-hand. Curtains hung in every window, and the refrigerator hummed quietly in the newly finished kitchen. Shayla had taken a rare day off from the diner. She spent the morning with her children, helping them arrange their new bedrooms exactly how they wanted them. "Can I really put my solar system poster on the ceiling?" Dean asked, holding up the large chart of planets he'd earned for his science project. "It's your room, baby. Make it yours," Shayla replied, handing him the tape. She watched her son climb carefully onto his bed to reach the ceiling, his face serious with concentration. At 10 years old, he was already showing signs of the man he would become: thoughtful, precise, determined. Down the hall, 7-year-old Kira was arranging her books on a small shelf, consulting with Martha about the best organization system. "Alphabetical is traditional," Martha was saying, "but organizing by subject might make more sense for your collection." The sight of her daughter and Martha bent over the bookshelf together made Shayla's heart swell. This was more than she'd ever hoped for when she'd first helped that elderly woman with the walker into her booth at the diner. After lunch, Shayla left the children with Martha and drove to the lawyer's office downtown. Mr. Patterson had offered his services at a reduced rate after hearing their story from his wife, a regular at the diner. "Everything's in order," he assured Shayla, sliding the paperwork across his desk. The property arrangement is legally sound. Martha retains ownership, but upon her passing, the house transfers directly to you. In exchange, you'll provide in-home care for her as needed and pay the reduced rent you've agreed upon. Shayla looked at the official document, her name and Martha's side by side in black and white. And you're sure this protects her too? I don't want any misunderstandings later. Mr. Patterson nodded. There are protections for both parties. You're making a fair arrangement that benefits everyone involved. On her way back home, and the word home now had a fullness it had never carried before, Shayla stopped at a small gift shop. She'd been saving tips for weeks for this final touch. When she pulled into the driveway, she sat for a moment looking at the transformed house. Fresh blue paint with white trim, new steps leading to a sturdy porch, window boxes Martha had insisted on planting with fall flowers. It wasn't fancy or perfect, but it was theirs. That evening, as rain tapped gently against the windows, they celebrated their first official night as housemates. Martha had prepared her famous apple crisp, and the children had made welcome cards with crayon drawings of their new family configuration, Shayla, Dian, Kira, and Martha together under one roof. After the children went to bed, Shayla and Martha sat at the kitchen table, the golden light of a new lamp casting warm shadows around them. "I have something for you," Shayla said, pulling out a small gift box tied with a simple ribbon, just a little housewarming present. Martha opened it carefully, revealing a handcrafted wooden keychain. Attached was a shiny new key. Kira helped design it, Shayla explained. She picked the wood pieces and Dian helped glue them together. Martha turned the keychain over in her palm, noticing a small heart burned into the wood. "There's a note too," Shayla added softly. Beneath the keychain lay a folded piece of paper. Martha opened it with hands that trembled slightly, not from arthritis this time, but from emotion. "To Martha," she read aloud, her voice catching, "who taught me that family isn't just who you're born to, but who you choose to care for. The house renovation is complete, but our journey isn't. The lawyer has drawn up the papers. The house will transfer to me only upon your passing, and in return, you'll live here with us for as long as you want. Your pension can go toward your medication, not rent. My children need their grandma Martha nearby, and I need my friend where I can check on her daily. No arguments from the teacher this time." Martha paused, tears welling in her eyes. "Your former student in life's classroom, Shayla." The two women sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their journey settling around them like a comfortable blanket. "Did I ever tell you," Martha said finally, her voice steady despite the tears on her cheeks, "that in 43 years of teaching, you're the best student I never had in class?" Shayla reached across the table and took Martha's hand in hers. "And you're the grandmother my children never knew they needed." Outside, the rain continued its gentle rhythm, washing the world clean for tomorrow. Inside, in the warm kitchen of a once-abandoned house, now filled with life again, two women from different worlds had created something rare and precious, a family built not from obligation or blood, but from choice, respect, and love that had begun with a simple cup of coffee served with care.